Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Bennett. I started out in safety, actually at NASA Johnson Space Center as a contract with one of their contractors. Did a lot with environmental and industrial hygiene. From there, I worked at various outfits from academic research safety, fleet safety for transit authorities and car logistics companies, and construction safety as well with mechanical contractors. My connection to probably facility safety started out early with the academic research university I worked for in Texas called University of Texas Medical Branch. I had a old school physical plant manager that took me under his wing, and he said, hey, if you want to get good at safety, you need to get close with the maintenance guys. And that's kind of where I learned to love and just appreciate it. I have a farm that I live on part-time, so maintenance is just all a part of farm work anyway. So my connection to it was kind of organic. It wasn't something that as a safety professional, I didn't look at it like it was foreign or something. It was just something that I had an instant connection to by repairing my own physical plants, my tractors and my HVAC and everything that we had going on the farm. Been in it, like I said, for almost 20 plus years now. Enjoy it. My biggest part of it is just working with the people and connecting with, getting to know them.
Awesome.
Shannon?
Awesome. Well, thanks, Justin. Hard to follow up after that. I'm Shannon Fertitta. I am the director of RIOS. Some of you may know what RIOS is. It's the Recycling Industry Operating Standard. It's the Quality, Environmental, Health, and Safety Management System for recycling, similar to the ISO standards most people have heard of and are familiar with. RIOS captures the spirit of those three big, the 9001, 14001, and 45001, and have crafted it specifically for recycling activities. So that's what RIOS is. And I have been in my role for about 7 months. But prior to that, I was on the board for RIOS for 5 years in the nonprofit seat. I managed an electronics recycling facility in Baton Rouge for 22 years. We were deeply involved in the sustainable and responsible management systems. We did R2 and RIOS, for those of you familiar with those standards. And, we really were super committed to making sure that every day when our workers started work, they were the management system, right? I mean, you have your people and then you have your systems, but they really should never be separate. They should all be the same thing. So, I'm excited to bring, my expertise and experience to the conversation today too.
Great. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Diecidue. I'm the RecycleGuard underwriting manager. We're the only endorsed ReMA insurance program in the country. I've been with RecycleGuard now for 10 and a half years. I was with RecycleGuard in 05 and 06 for another 2, came back for more.
Couldn't get it.
What all these guys do as far as safety goes plays into what we do as underwriters as far as pricing and coverage, terms, selection. So you'll learn more about what we look at as the conversation goes. I've been in the insurance industry since, I hate to say it, but like early 90s. I've run the gambit of industries, but been with recycling operations for some time now.
Okay, you're up.
I'm the old guy. They have to help me once in a while here. So I started life out in the fire department, and in 1982, I discovered the waste business. So I joined a company back then. You probably don't remember it. I don't think anybody in here would remember it, except for one or two, BFI, Browning Ferris Industries. So I started there in 82 in the Boston area as safety and operations, and moved through there. I did my 10-year sentence with them, and then I moved on from there to waste management for a bit. And then I left waste management and ended up with my own consulting firm for about 14 years, and then landed in 2005. I ended up at Casella Waste. So I'm the VP of safety for Casella Waste. We're a waste company. We've got a number of MRFs, and we have a number of composting and lots of hauling and all of those type of things. We're primarily the East Coast and the Northeast of the East Coast. So that's where we work there. My degree is in fire protection and in safety, and I'm kind of the safety geek here. We try to do things with you and learn from you. So I'm sure that most of you will maybe just be reminded of an idea today that you already have or that you've already done. So my goal is not to teach you the new silver bullet. Here's how you maintain all your stuff for $1.50 a day. I'm not in that business. It's just maybe to remind you. But as you're talking to other people at lunch or anytime, mention some of the things to them because they may just not know that there's another way to do some stuff. So we can go through with a lot of those things. And that's where I sit here today. So again, open questions, discussion. Jerry's going to kick us off here and do that. And yes, I'll replace my picture that was on the screen earlier so I look as good as Jerry.
You're probably all sitting here saying, oh man, what did I walk into? A safety or insurance session. We're going to talk a little bit about how everything is related and how you can work towards your maintenance programs and also maybe save some money on insurance. But if you're following along with some of the insurance things, enhance your maintenance program. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the safety aspects and how it ties into that. Enhancing your maintenance programs and making them better, some tools that you can do with that. As I said, I was going to bring up some pictures, and I'm going to kick it off as Michael said, and then we'll talk a little bit. And if you have something you'd like to share on these photos, we'd really love to have you participate. The first thing I want to say is that
there you go.
So if this is your photo or photos, I apologize, but we use these a lot in some of our training. How many people run shredders? How many people don't like solids? Bad day, right? So in this situation, the story that goes along with it was that solid went through, the inspector missed it, the person feeding missed it, and that machine ate itself. The gearbox let go, drive shaft let go, and it also damaged the motor. And they were down for an extended period of time. And part of the reason they were down was that they couldn't get the parts that they needed. They weren't available. So we want to talk a little bit about having parts on hand. We want to talk a little bit about where it makes sense to have parts and where it might not make sense for you, and other things that you can do for parts storage, because some of the stuff, as you all know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, some of the stuff is really expensive, and with it sitting on a shelf collecting dust, it doesn't help you, does it? So, Susan, I'm going to pick on you first from the insurance perspective. What does extreme downtime do for you and your claims? And in essence, what does downtime do to your insureds moving forward?
The key would be to have spare parts. If you don't, you're going to be down longer. The longer you're down, the less income you're going to make, the more your insurance claim is going to go up. When we look at an account, we look at those losses. So it grows and grows and grows. The larger it is, the harder it is to get insurance, harder it is to get terms and conditions that you might want and need. So the key is to be preventative instead of going, oops, what do I do? That part's in Germany and it's going to take 4 months before it gets over here. We understand that these parts are expensive, so potentially maybe you make a deal with a provider that will keep and save and store and put like a small deposit down instead of buying the whole thing. There are solutions, but again, in the big picture, if you're not preventative, you're potentially going to incur a big loss and you're going to be out of work, and you're still going to have to pay those workers, and you're still going to have to pay the electricity and everything else. So, and if you do have business income coverage, the carrier will be footing the bill. So, and ultimately it reflects on the way your account looks to an underwriter.
One of the things I run into all the time when people install new machinery or a new maintenance person comes on board with a corporation, I don't see them communicating with their suppliers real well. What I run into a lot of times is, oh my gosh, the shredder just ate itself. We've got to find these things. And they start making phone calls. And to Susan's point, that's in Germany. That's going to be on a slow boat. We'll see you in a month if you can get it that soon. And now you get downtime. One of the suggestions that we like to share is that you should be communicating with your suppliers. You should be communicating with the manufacturers, and you should be having those good conversations about, hey, if I need this stuff, how soon can you get it for me? And if the answer is, well, it's in wherever and it's going to take a long time, perhaps you look at alternatives. A lot of this machinery has parts that are made by other manufacturers than the main manufacturer. You may be able to access those parts through them and get them for your facility a little bit quicker. We had a situation a long time ago where we couldn't get parts, and we actually went to a fabricator and we were able to get them to fabricate those parts for us. They had the designs for it. So as we needed those, we didn't have to have them sitting on the shelf because parts aren't cheap and they're going up more and more. So we were able to have those ready to go whenever they could whip them together for us and we could get those parts. Be inventive, but communicate. Talk to the suppliers, talk to the manufacturers, and make sure you understand what parts you need and not when the sky is falling, but be that proactive person. Anybody else?
Something else would be reciprocal agreements. I know shredders are far and few between, and it's harder to do that. But if you're not a shredding facility, you're here at ReMA, you all know each other. Come up with some kind of agreement that, hey, if I go down, can we do processing at your facility, or can I pay you to process my materials for a portion of the revenues? Come up with solutions before the accident happens.
There are benefits to being part of an association like this.
Yeah.
You come to these big annual events and you connect with hundreds and thousands of other people doing the same thing you do and have the same challenges that you have. So make friends, make friends in the industry. Definitely leverage that.
Yeah.
One thing, if I can say about safety on a large fix like this, if you're ordering something and you have a plan of when it's going to be delivered, the parts are coming in and what the day you're going to do the job, please plan ahead. I've had a number of accidents, one very clearly where the large parts came in. It was an enormous generator at an energy plant, and they had to move one piece out and put another piece in. Well, they didn't have their labor ready. They didn't have the plan ready, so they just grabbed whoever was around and they put a forklift at one end and a forklift at the other end. Keep in mind, this thing is 40 feet long and the two forklifts don't talk to each other. Anyway, it fell off the forklift and someone was very much hurt, right? So plan when you get there, plan that it's coming in next Tuesday or whatever. They've talked about a lot of things, and that's the hard part and that's the expensive part. But when it's there and you're ready to do the job, make sure the people are qualified and you got the folks lined up to get it done. Because I will tell you that one of the things we have a saying in the fire department, if they're not breathing, it doesn't matter. And you can only die once. So please don't do it's a problem you can't fix. You guys are resourceful. You wouldn't be in this business if you weren't. You can fix anything. The amazing people work in our industry, right? They can fix anything, but you can't fix someone passing away. It's just awful, right? So please prepare your workforce that's there, or delay it until you can get the right people in, but have some sort of plan. It can't be, hey, boss, the big piece of stuff is here and he wants it off his truck right now, that type of thing. So please jump.
I messed up. He took the clicker away from me, so now I'm really freaking out.
That's good, Judge.
There, you're on the next page.
Hey, it's advanced by itself. That's cool. What's your inventory program look like? Is that your inventory program? Is that what your warehousing looks like? I can tell you that a good number of places that I go to, that's not the case. And one thing is keeping track of your inventory. There are inventory programs out there. I'm not going to list all of them, but I can tell you Dossier was one that we use. There's some other ones out there. But it's, as we all know, data in, data out. Maybe someday AI is going to help us, and it's going to read as you take the materials out of the shop and keep track of it. But there is nothing worse than going to look for a part that you really need that is not something you can buy someplace off the shelf, and you go looking for it and it's gone, and then you find out that Mike took the thing a month ago and never told anybody. And he does that. He's notorious for that. Yeah. But make sure that you're organized, make sure you're neat and orderly, make sure whatever program you have is tracking those materials and keeping up with those. There's all kinds of QR codes and things that you can put on the materials so that to make it easy for your maintenance team to scan those as they're taking them out. It also helps you, obviously, I know I'm speaking obvious, but it helps you with your cost controls as far as what is that equipment costing you, and how are you doing that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and we're going to get into the safety side of the house. Having a messy facility can cause you some serious problems with slips, trips, and falls, which slips, trips, and falls are a huge deal for our industry. That's some of the biggest causes of our accidents and injuries. Get it? All right.
Should be.
Okay.
Probably
Where we're going. Did you get me a more powerful one?
I'll go unplug there. That'll work.
So, you don't have to be that neat with it and that organized, but you should at least know what you have and keep track of what you have. The other thing that I wanted to mention is we talked about maybe not stocking parts. Talk to your suppliers. Sometimes if you're a large enough customer to them, they may stock things for you because they know you're going to be using it. And then they charge you as you take those things. You have a voice, and especially if you're giving them a lot of business. There's a lot of suppliers out there that will actually stock things on the shelf for you, particularly things you might find it hard to get. Particular conveyor belts. If you're using a lot of conveyor belts, let's say they're getting sliced up or what have you, maybe you want to look at a different type of conveyor belt so that you can be resistant to the cutting on them. But it may be a specialized belt that you need to keep in stock. That's an issue for you. Anybody else?
So I want to talk about, probably go back one slide where you look at the picture of the failure of the shredder. There's a couple of things that's going to come to mind as a safety guy as I walk in there, or I'm doing a site visit or whatever you want to call it. Is that an operational error, or is that just a mechanical failure? You're going to have you're going to have to replace the parts and get a new piece in, but how do you ensure if it's operational, it doesn't happen again, right? You want to make sure that this issue that happened by someone loading the wrong object in the shredder, they were untrained, they didn't know quite what they were doing. This is causing a work stoppage, putting you down for several months because now you have to worry about sourcing parts, repairing it, getting it back online, and then making sure everything's running right. And then the next person you got in, is he qualified to run it? So you want to ensure your training is up right. As you get into inventory management, and we connect that as a safety professional to clean shops and tidy shops. Me, as a safety professional, I don't expect it to be spotless, right? I know that's not the way it's going to happen, right? I do expect to see something in some sort, not disarray, but something in working order to show that you have things going on in the shop. A lot of the times when I've inspected maintenance shops in the past, they were squeaky clean. I'm like, well, how do you do work, right? This is not the way it is, because my visits were announced and stuff like that. You'll have a working shop, but it shouldn't be full of hazards, but we should see how you work. Like, I want to be able to communicate with you. Maybe you shouldn't stow it this way. Maybe you should do something with your cord management like this instead of working around them in that sort of fashion. So you just want to be able to see how people are naturally working so you can correct them as needed.
Right.
How many maintenance people are in this room? What does this do to your day, your week, your month? That's good.
It is good. Yeah.
That's great.
How many of you have spare parts?
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on site, or do you have an agreement with the supplier on site?
The other thing to throw out there, and part of where I was going with this is, what does this do for your PMs on all the other equipment you can't get to? How far does that set you back? I know you've got parts in place, but let's say you've got a catastrophic event where, this is your money maker. You got to pull a whole bunch of people off of everything else to get this thing back up and running. What's happening to all your other PMs? And, I can speak from that perspective, it's frustrating, especially when people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing and aren't listening to you, and this happens. So the training and the reinforcement is huge, and spending that time to make sure that you're educating everybody and you are having some quality control in some way to get people to pay attention. We're going to talk a little bit more about that.
Right. And in Rios, we would have identified that as a quality risk. That's a huge quality risk, and it would have a domino effect. I mean, it would affect so many things after that. It would have a chain reaction. So yeah, I mean, really important that you have a plan in place before those things occur.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's why
Sure.
it's important to have, especially a written plan, because then, and you bring it into your training.
Right.
So everybody knows when this stuff happens, what the expectations are.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. And you know, and as I said, there's many people that do that, and I applaud you for that. There are other people that just plan for the disaster and don't look beyond the disaster and what they can do. And that's part of the message today is those communications and that pre-planning is huge. So we talked about inventory control and paying attention to your inventory. You don't necessarily have to stock all that. I came from a company that bought way too much stuff, particularly on the trucking end of the house. And I can tell you that we threw millions of dollars over the side because the trucks had been retired, new model trucks coming in, and the parts that we had didn't fit anything. We were fortunate that some of our filter companies, the suppliers out there, could take some of the filters back and resell those for us. We lost money on that because they're not going to take them in 100%. You get the restocking fees, and they're going to sell them at a discount. But at least we weren't throwing those all away. But we threw some serious stuff away, and that was a lesson learned about inventory control. That's why I say if you can come up with a plan or a method to pay attention to all that, you're not going to be buying too much because you know what your consumption is going to be, you know, monthly, annually, or what have you. But just some things to share on that. Anybody have anything else out there? Any other thoughts? Yes, sir. That dossier it's I'm sure it's been updated. I've been out of the industry and working for ReMA now for about 4 years, but you know, they wore soup to nuts. But again, data in, data out. If people are going and taking parts, you're not keeping track of everything. And you know, we were able to track cradle to grave on equipment, and we could tell trucks, let's say, we could tell how much that truck was costing us. We could make good decisions when end of life made the most sense on that vehicle, and it was really a good thing. Every nut, bolt, and washer. And I'll throw the safety side into it as well. A program like that helps you with crashes, because the first thing you get subpoenaed on is all of your maintenance records on that vehicle, particularly when you have a fatality or a serious incident. They want to know when the last time those brakes were done. They want to know what type of maintenance you did and upkeep on that. And it was a lot of fun. And I'll digress for a second. Telematics and onboard computers cameras are huge, because you can use all that for evidence. And I used to smile when plaintiff's attorney was asking for all kinds of stuff, and I'd hand over our maintenance records and show that we had taken really good care of that vehicle, and it didn't give them much to do. You raise your hand. You've got a system? How do you like it? Good. So you're tied into the Reels program too? Good.
Great.
Excellent.
Can I grab you when this is over? I just want to.
So that's a great example of ReMA, right? Rios, ReMA, all of us in here, because you can't have a problem in your industry that somebody else probably already had and solves. Now, Will you solve the problem the way he did? Maybe not, but you might get an idea out of it.
Right.
Use those connections. Use the networking that you have here. It isn't all just about the vendors.
Yeah.
If you ask a vendor, what system do I want? It's the one I'm trying to sell you,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But
sure.
the folks that are in here, they've already got the bloody nose. They already bought the
Oh,
right
yeah.
one, the wrong one, the
Mhm.
different one. So please use that. There's not a problem you can have in this industry that
Oh, yeah.
isn't able to be solved in a hallway here somewhere.
Right.
And it's funny about that when people are justifying calls all the time. Hey, I want to go to ReMA. I want to go to the convention. What do I tell my boss? Well, tell them why you want to come here for just those type of things.
Right.
I know you all came just to come to this class because of us, but there's a lot that can be done. But use ReMA, use your other associations to do that. You're not alone out there, right?
yeah.
You don't have to solve it yourself.
I saw a system a while back, and I wanted to gather more information before I came here, and I wasn't successful at it. But every machine, every truck has a QR code. Take a picture of it. It brings up that equipment. Is that one of the things you're using?
You're messed up. Yep.
Yeah.
So the system that I saw takes it one step further. Those codes are on the machine. Take a picture of the machine. It actually brings up that machine, and it has all your daily check sheets on that. And when the operator or driver or whomever fills out that, it goes right into the system. And it's a good program.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Fleetio, we looked into that at my previous facility, but we only had 2 trucks. I mean, it was a small fleet, so it was a little too expensive for our needs. Because we were nonprofit, we didn't have a very big budget. So, but Fleetio was awesome. Yeah, it's really all encompassing. It's a great system.
And
I'm sure there's more to come,
all of this information from an insurance underwriter perspective is great to hear. And we don't get a lot of this feedback. So I would encourage you to share this with your agents, because we don't know what we don't know if
Right.
we're not told.
Yeah.
Like checking a box with a formal maintenance program versus I've got this system that does this, this, and this, which can help, to Jerry's point, like if there's a claim, an auto claim, and they accuse you of not having your brakes in check or whatever, you have a log of it. So more information is better,
Yeah.
for sure.
Bring everything to the table when it's time for your insurance renewals.
So this slide was just that if you can't at this point afford or find a program like that, create your own. Make sure that you've got daily check sheets, not just on your trucks and your heavy equipment, all of your equipment. Make sure somebody is inspecting that. Make sure people are held accountable, and just follow through with that. I'm going to talk more about it as we move forward, but
Jerry,
can
I think
everybody
you had a
be?
question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm not an adjuster, but I would definitely, if you had a claim, I would voluntarily share it, in my opinion,
Yes.
just to back yourself up. And to his point, the cameras, they're huge. Huge. Sometimes it's a determination of you're at fault or the other one's at fault, especially when it's a he said type claim.
We run cameras in our equipment, and at the site of the incident, the police officer would ask if we could share when there is a conflicting information. Usually most of the time when we have an incident like that, we know we are in communication with them from a corporate perspective. We share it, and they'll show the police officer right on their phone.
Yep.
And that can be a determining factor right there.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry mentioned earlier about your maintenance records and, not going down the rabbit hole, but even who touches the truck is discoverable.
Yeah.
You want to make sure the person that is doing the PMs and doing the maintenance is qualified to do that, because if they're not going to go into detail, it can become a big deal from a discoverable purpose. You don't want the fabrication guy changing a tire if he's not qualified to change the tire.
Right. What a night.
That's a huge deal.
Unless he's a big guy and can lift that up right. But, one of the things I'm on the other side of the table from an underwriter. So when we are trying to do our renewals for our excess insurance and such, there's an underwriter or a bunch of underwriters on the other side of the table, and you become sort of a salesman, right? We have a safety program and it's good because, and you want to provide insurance for my company because, right? Because they have a choice to take your risk Or do they take the graham cracker company down the street for a risk, right? It's all a business proposition. And if you talk to your accounting folks, and there's probably a few of you in the room, our highest costs, if you made a list of them, number 4 or 5 is usually risk management, right? What you're paying for premiums, what you pay for claims, what you pay for a lot of things. It's hugely important, and it's bottom line dollars. Every dollar that goes in is at the bottom. It's already shaken to the bottom, and you're spending that, right? So if you're making 15%, and you spend X, you've got to make $150,000 to come through that front door to pay for that accident or that injury. So it's hugely important. So the systems you're talking about, don't ever think they're not important. Make sure people know what you're doing and know how you're tracking them and getting it up there. Don't keep it a secret at your company because it can help the company in obtaining proper insurance coverages, and maybe you don't hurt anybody. So that's what we all want to do.
When we discussed this yesterday, just kind of a little small round table, a large part of it is your culture, right? I mean, you have all these plans, you have all these programs in place, whether they're PM plans, safety programs, and it means nothing without the proper culture. And from an insurance adjuster, when you're going up for a renewal and you're presenting this great binder full of plans and programs, but the severity and the amount of incidents and claims you file don't add up to this great program you're submitting. It's a telltale sign of a poor culture. Yeah, you got everything on paper.
Yeah, it's good on paper.
But there's no enforcement. There's no buy-in from your colleagues and your teammates that are out there that have to do the work on the day-to-day. And large part of that is that leader, right? I mean, that leader at the local site, if he's not championing that program and empowering the people to be, a huge part of it.
If your GM doesn't walk through the plant wearing his PPE, then why would his workers think that it's important? It's the same philosophy.
And even beyond, even beyond just the donning of PPE, it's just how well does that leader champion the program to make the other colleagues buy in?
Right.
I know somebody that can just put on a hard hat and vest and just go around and say, oh, you wearing it? Oh, great, blah, 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 this and that. And they show up once a day. But how many times does he walk in that floor?
So put these pictures together beyond the obvious of the really messy areas. And we talked about trip hazards, slips and falls and everything. What do you see from these pictures? We've got some pictures of neat and organized, and we've got some pictures of a real mess. What does that speak to you about? If you're hiring, you're looking for a really good mechanic and you bring them into one of those shops with all the crap all over the place, what's the chances of them coming to work for you?
Who's worked in a train wreck like that before? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes, and their employees.
That's right.
The other thing I wanted to add is you're not going to do this when OSHA comes knocking on the door, because that doesn't cut it. This is the culture that you just heard about. This is having the leadership say, I'm not going to accept anything less than this. Exactly. And I promise you will attract good help if your shop looks like that. The other benefit to that is when you do have OSHA or somebody else knocking at the door, it could be Federal Highway coming in wanting to do an inspection for your transportation side of the house. They're going to look at you at a whole different light than they are if your house is a mess. And I promise you that. It's going to reflect on you as soon as they walk in the door. And this isn't hard. Problem is we get in a habit of just throwing everything everywhere, and we're in a big hurry and everything. I would suggest to you that you allow your staff at the end of shift every day to clean up. The problem is that we keep pushing, and they're in a big hurry, and somebody screwed up the shredder, and it takes away loud time for people to keep up with that. The other benefit of this that I sometimes struggle to have people understand where I'm going with it is if that shop is neat and orderly, your people are going to know right where the porta power is. They're going to know right where all the big wrenches are that they don't have in their toolboxes. And what's that going to do for your bottom line? Hey, Justin, where was that porta power? Didn't we have that out by Unit 3 a couple of days ago? Do you know where it is now? And that is a huge time drain. I'm also going to tell you, my experience has been that when I go to Justin looking for the porta power, I'm going to be saying, hey, how about that game last night, man? Hey, what are you up to this weekend? What's going on?
Right.
Hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
And it just breeds that. And if you're organized, if everything is a place for everything and everything is placed, if you can do that, I promise you, you will be more efficient. I promise you, your outcome will be a lot better. I promise you, people will look at you differently. And think about it when you go back. I'll guarantee you there are people in this room that have shops that look like the ones that are on there, both sides. And I urge you to take a look at where you're at.
That picture on the left, Jerry, that just screams fire hazard to me. I mean, I just see that and I just think to myself, all that dust and accumulation and combustibles. I'm just like,
It's a life hazard.
Hazard
You're
after
right.
hazard waiting to happen.
On you guys, right.
So somebody did mention the cost. What we have a problem with, and I will admit it, and some of you may admit it, is I can't find the wrench. Hey, boss, buy a new one. I can't find the alternator. I know we've got 6 of them around here someplace, but I can't find them. So go buy another one. And it's for usually the smaller things. You're not going to buy the $100,000 items, but add up in your shop the $2,000 items, right?
Sure.
If I already have it, but I can't find it, I bought a new one. Well, Johnny, why did you buy a new one? Because it'd take me 6 hours to find that. And you told me I got to keep the labor costs down, blah, blah, blah. So you do all that. So our formula is every recycling center shuts down an hour and a half to 2 hours before the end of the day, and everybody cleans.
Yep.
Supervisor, brooms, whatever you've got to do, thermal imaging to check out stuff for fire, blah, blah, blah. So we do all that. Get in that habit and build it into your price. And I know price is awful, right? You guys are on a thin margin to start with, and you don't want to spend more money, but you don't want to end up in the next photo here either.
No.
So,
Yes.
So this next photo is mine. I was out looking at some property damage, and they say, hey, can you come back to the yard? And I came around the corner, and that's what I found. And doing the investigation, what I also found was the operator was not doing good checks. We had some frayed hydraulic lines on there. One of the lines let go, and the hydraulic oil was atomized, and it went right on top of the turbo. And that was the root cause of that fire. And that's a pretty expensive day. And we took a good look at ourselves and started looking at what the failure was and spent some time on it. But hydraulic lines have always been a pet peeve of mine in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. The reportable threshold is 10 gallons. If you have 10 gallons on the ground on a sunny day, you have to call the state. You have to call a remediation contractor to come in to clean that up, and it gets quite expensive. So when I was doing checks on equipment and trucks, one of the big things I was looking for was, do you have lines chafing? Do you have things happening on that equipment that people should be noticing? And we actually got to the point where we were reprimanding operators and drivers for not performing those and not paying attention to those. There are really fun things you can do. You don't need to take the stick out all the time. And speaking of sticks, anybody ever heard of a short stick? That too. I usually use the club. If you can get a hold of a dipstick that obviously goes to that particular vehicle or piece of equipment, and you cut that stick off, and you can announce the short stick program, but that'll tell you pretty quick whether people are doing proper pre-shift and pre-trip inspections. Because if somebody comes to you with that short stick, you buy them lunch or you give them a gift card or whatever. If they don't come to you and you know what truck number that is, you start knocking on their door and you say, hey, did you check your oil today? Oh, yeah, I check my oil all the time. Come here, let's check your oil. I want to go see. And, you can make it fun. You don't need to be yelling at people all the time, but you can be inventive on that. Sometimes I would have hung a manila tag on there. Hey, go see Jerry. He's got something for you. And, I say, hey, thanks for coming up. I really appreciate it. So make it fun, but you want to encourage people to be looking for stuff.
Right.
And you can't be everywhere all the time. I'm talking about maintenance people, and I'm also talking about those of you who are in leadership roles. But you can find ways to get people to look at equipment. Can everybody be an equipment operator? Talking about maintenance guys, especially. No, right? Everybody thinks you can. And I would say to you that 98% of people can move a machine from point A to point B. But being an equipment operator, for those that you don't know, is a whole heck of a lot more. What else do you expect from an equipment operator?
Not even sitting behind the wheel, just nice. That's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I like that you do that first. Yeah.
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 It's
Of course.
plan.
Yeah.
It's a good plan. How about is a good equipment operator, and I'm not just talking about loaders and material handlers and trucks and everything else, an equipment operator with all equipment. Is a good equipment operator in tune with their machinery?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. You are literally in tune with that machine. You are part of that machine. For those of you who are not equipment operators, I mean that. And those of you who are understand where I'm going with this. You hear every noise. You feel every bump. You know, anything different, you know right away. There's nothing that has driven me more crazy over my career than to walk through a plant and hear a bearing squealing, or hearing, tracks on a machine moving and those things are screaming. And you pull the guy out, don't you hear that? What? And, it's just, it's frustrating. So understand that the people you're putting in responsible for that equipment sometimes may not be the right people. Yeah. And you got to pay attention to that, and you got to look at what your downtime is, and you got to look for the reasons for your downtime, and you may want to make some decisions based on that. I know it's hard to find help and everything, but if somebody is destroying a $400,000, $500,000 material handler because they're simply not paying attention and they don't really care about the machine, they're just a stick puller, and take a good look at that and make sure they're the right people. Give them a chance, teach them, spend time with them. But I promise you, if you take that approach, your mechanic's going to love you, right?
The other side of that is make sure you give your supervisors enough training, and so they understand that Joe's complaining about the baler again. What a pain in the neck that guy is. Every day he's got something wrong with it. Listen to the guy. Encourage them to do it. Because if you had listened to Joe, maybe you wouldn't be in a situation that you may end up in, right? There are the painful folks that do work out there, very anal about what they do, but they want it right, and you want it right as managers and owners and such. But make sure they're being listened to do that, because there's nothing worse than demoralizing an employee who brings up something, then their equipment breaks down in 10 days from there because of a squeak or a belter or whatever. Jerry's going to talk about using all your senses and things. Listen to the guy. He knows what he's doing. He's on this piece of equipment 10 hours a day. He knows that something just doesn't sound right. I don't know what it is, but he goes and grabs the maintenance guy and, hey, come on out here. And I just want to, it doesn't usually sound like this. And you can get in front of that, but listen to him. Nothing worse than going to your boss with something that somebody's been complaining about for 10 days. And now you're in the first slide that we started with here. Like, uh-oh. Mm-hmm. So he's mad because it's broken to start with. But if he's mad and you knew it 10 days ago and you didn't help, that's really, that's like super mad.
That goes to your auto fleet too, for that matter. Nothing's worse from an underwriting standpoint when you get an application and it says, we don't have any safer violations, and we go in and we pull it and you're at a 40 or 60% and it's brakes and it's treads and it's other stuff. And it's like, okay, pre, post, is anybody paying attention? You're driving a 45,000 plus truck. You're talking about human lives at the end of the day, and you got to be safe.
Yeah.
Who runs spare trucks? So is the spare truck right off the showroom floor? Part of the issue we have, and we talked a little bit about it, and I'll let other people share too, the spare truck is not necessarily the most pristine vehicle in the fleet. You probably have, in many cases, seat issues where they're not comfortable to drive. They're dogs. The air conditioning may not be working. We'll go through the whole list of why that truck is not desirable. What does that do to you when you're trying to have a truck and have your drivers or operators down that vehicle, their vehicle, because it needs work? What typically happens? There. I'm not suggesting that you take the truck right off the showroom floor. What I am suggesting is that you maintain that spare truck just like you would any other truck, and you make it attractive for them, and make it so that people would want to jump into that spare truck. But I am not a fan of seat hopping, by the way, and I will guarantee the mechanics in this room aren't either. When you seat hop, things go really bad. Nobody reports them and all the rest of it. And with that said, here's another tip for the maintenance team and for leadership. If you're seeing a lot of damage, over my career, there were 3 guys that I really hated, and I was never able to catch up with them, and I would have beat them to a pulp. It was not me, I don't know, and the other guy. I still, if I ever catch them, I'm telling you, it's not going to be pretty. But what happens, and the reason you have not me, I don't know, and the other guy is because there's no accountability. And it's really difficult to have accountability when you're seat hopping all the time, whether it be heavy equipment or trucks, because nobody's going to report what happened. One thing you can consider doing is to hold people accountable. Go around and inspect all of your equipment, much like you're renting a car, mark down every dent, ding, and mark on that equipment, and have a baseline. Start telling all your operators that the last guy that operated that vehicle or that piece of equipment or whatever is responsible for the damage that wasn't documented on that piece of equipment. And by doing that, people are going to say, holy crap, I need to walk around this thing and look for damage before I run it. And I need to tell my boss, hey, this damage wasn't here yesterday when I was running it, or what have you, before they even jump on the machine. And then the last guy on that piece of equipment is the one that's going to be the one held accountable for it, and so on. And I promise you, everybody's going to start saying, I'm not doing that. And you're going to catch up with not me, I don't know, and the other guy. Try it. And it's a really good way to minimize the amount of damage you have, to free up your mechanics from having to work on silly things that people aren't accountable for and not paying attention to. The other side of that is nobody's going to want to damage it. They're going to maybe take a little bit more ownership on that piece of equipment and care a little bit more. So,
does anybody work Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, run trucks and do different things out there? So the problem we had early on, fixed it immediately, but the Saturday guy that comes in on a reduced fleet. So if we run 150 trucks out of a location Monday through Friday, they may be 20 going out on Saturday or Sunday, right? All those guys jump into the new trucks and they leave them a little disarrayed. They leave debris in them. If they leave a load on it, find a flat tire and leave it. So the guy who's assigned to that truck, right? And they take pride in that, because who do you give the new trucks to? You give them to your best folks, right? Usually, right? Some people don't think so, but you do that. And he comes in and his truck's a shit box. What are you going to do with that? That demoralizes him as well. So we put an end to it. You're not driving the new trucks on a Saturday. Drive the truck you're assigned to and get it done. To do that, now it gets convoluted because maintenance picks up a lot of work on Saturdays because the trucks are there, right? Or the piece of equipment is there. And this works for forklift, rubber tire loaders, whatever it would be. Just make sure that there's some rules. Let them drive the new trucks if they're going to take care of them. So everything Jerry said is exactly right. Would you let that person drive your car? I get that all the time. I'm investigating an accident and I do it every time. I say to the manager, hey, can I borrow the keys to your car? Sure, what do you need? I'm going to give it to him so he can run down to the store and get me a sandwich. He's not driving my car. Really? The 65 Volvo out there, you won't let him drive, but you'll let him drive my $800,000 truck. Really? You're not going to do that. So keep that in mind when you're making those rules. You can go either way with it. I'm just telling you what I did because we couldn't get by that. Monday morning, there's fisticuffs out in the garage because I screwed up Joe's truck. And now you got to unravel that as well so we can get everybody out. So it's just one more thing to do to keep everybody going in the right direction.
Who's running thermal imaging cameras? It'd be nice to see everybody raise your hands. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons to have them. One of the things we're starting to preach more and more about is fire detection. just walking by your in-feed piles and taking a picture every once in a while is going to paint a huge picture for you if you have any hot spots or whatever. But the other advantage to those is to be checking your electrical circuitry. I recommend that at least once a year you should do that, but you can, if you own your own camera, you can actually walk by panels pretty quick and check to see if there's any hot spots. Hot spots are fire, or it can be potentially fire, and a lot of times it's just because you've got a little corrosion in there or a loose connection. But the other thing that you could have in there is a voltage drop, which is going to wreak havoc with some of your electric motors. And, you know, there's other things that we're going to get into as well that you will see as you're doing that. Now, make sure you have a plan when you're doing that. You've got a licensed electrician coming through or somebody that is authorized to open one of those panels, arc flash potential and training, and arc flash gear as well. That's under NFPA 70, but you should be checking those. Somebody should be addressing those. And you could have a whole circuit let go on you, and then you're spending time tracing and trying to find out what the issue is and increasing more downtime for you.
I was wondering how realistic it was to have that heat detection hardware, but from what you guys have shared with me, it has become really affordable. It has become something that anybody should have, at least one or two. You should have something that is looking for heat. You should have some hardware.
$400 to $600.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about here, right? They're small, they're portable.
Yeah.
Flora makes them, and there's probably 10 other ones. Just go put it in Amazon, and they'll spit up a bunch of them, right?
I thought they were wildly expensive, and then
They use
$400 to $600, and I said, "Wow, things have really changed. It's really become something that everybody should have."
Check with your insurance company. Oftentimes, loss control programs will actually come in and do the work for you.
Yeah.
They have the equipment, but they're going to want you to have a plan. They're not going to be opening those panels unless they're a trained electrician or whatever. They're going to want your electrician there. We were talking yesterday. We used to actually have the power company in after we had done all of our surveys and identified everything. Power company would come in and kill the line voltage at the street. We would spend a Saturday or Sunday with our electricians going through all the panels and fixing everything that we had identified. And also, you'll see some pictures. We also would take the time to clean out those panels. And you, particularly depending on what type of material you're running, you can see some pretty scary things inside those panels. And I'll show you some pictures as we go. But there are other benefits to thermal imaging. How are your motors performing? Are your motors overheating? Is that going to knock down the efficiency on those motors? Do you have a potential for windings to get cooked, which is going to cause you downtime, and you're going to have to send those out or get another motor replacement? How's your bearings, races, and all the rest of that doing? Check your conveyor belts, your return idlers, your troughing idlers. Those get dry, mostly because people aren't paying attention. That goes back to that squealing I said. I can tell pretty quick walking through a plant whether or not you're getting good grease to a lot of those bearings. So, spend the time on that. And also check your fuse panels. Sometimes you may have some bad fuses in there, and you're going to see some heat on a couple because they're carrying power that one's not doing. And you could be getting into single phasing, which for those of you who don't know, a lot of equipment is three phase, which means three legs of energy coming into that equipment. If you drop down to two or one phase, you're running the risk of literally destroying your equipment. Your motors will cook themselves and burn up, and a lot of other things. So those thermal imaging cameras are huge tools for you to use. And as you've heard, they're not really that costly.
And they help with your planning too. So when I first introduced these at my companies, we were doing it for fire purposes, right? We leave piles of debris overnight, maybe in a transfer station or at a recycling center or whatever. Measure the pile, make sure there's no hot spots before you go home. So we would do that and document it. And I kept getting calls from the ops guys that I lost the camera. I don't know where it is. We need another one. I said, well, check with maintenance. They probably have it, because they would borrow it and they would be just taking a quick walk through the plant, measuring bearings, doing motors like you see here on the screen and doing all that. But they all came, not all, but a lot of them came to me in a summit like we were doing here. We put everybody in one room once a year. And they were saying that we can plan our maintenance. So the bearing isn't cooked today, but it's getting hot. It's run a little hotter than the others. I can plan that for next Saturday or the following Saturday or whatever. And it was keeping their maintenance costs down, because when you lose a major part, now it's down during the middle of the week. Now you got downtime and you have to fix it. So the maintenance guys were saying, I got to fix it anyway. So if I can fix it on my schedule, that's much easier and much better. So it can be something that you can use.
And don't forget, a huge portion of these claims that we see for contractors' equipment are wiring issues. So be proactive versus waiting for them to burn down and losing the whole piece. It's huge.
And it took, yes. There you go.
There it is.
Can you share how much that cost you?
There you go.
Wow.
Yep.
Can you, I'm feeling a little under the weather. Can you just check, make sure I'm okay?
Don't, because then we'll know.
Yeah.
I'm not okay, trust me.
No,
So here's a really good example of housekeeping and paying attention. You're certainly not going to open your panels all the time, but have a program, and the more dusty conditions that you have, not just inspect more often, find out where your spillage is coming from. Spillage, again, is a cost. Spillage, again, is a maintenance challenge. If you can stop spillage somehow, or you can capture spillage, whether it's dust or whether it's other materials coming off of a belt, you're going to save a lot in the long run. When I worked in the sand and gravel and quarry company, I learned many, many years ago that we would have guys shoveling up piles at the end of the day, and our owner came out one day, saw the guy shoveling up piles of material, and he said, "What are you doing?" So I'm cleaning up the mess. And he came to a guy at that time that I was working for and said, "Why is he doing that?" "Well, it's a mess." "Okay, what's that costing us?" And, well, I don't, well, how long is that taking him? A couple hours. And how long did that take to accumulate? Well, today. Okay. How can we fix that? Well, get another guy? No. Figure out what's causing that. Figure out what the causation is of that. Seal something up, redivert, fix it, or what have you, so that you're not contributing to the downtime. It's not costing you extra expense. So you get a motor like that, what's causing that? And what can you do differently looking at that? And when you're evaluating all your plants and your equipment, what types of things can you do to be inventive to make things better so that you're more productive, so that your poor maintenance guys aren't beating themselves to death, and your cost is down because you're not replacing components and everything. So take a look at that. But I'll also tell you that you're going to hear that that's a sealed motor probably. The dust is going to get in there, and it's going to cause a problem for you. The other thing is your panels, and that picture of that panel is exactly what I was saying to you. Make sure that when you're inspecting your panels that you're paying attention to that, and you're having a good program to vacuum that out and clean that out. The best lockout tag out in the world that we can come up with was to kill the whole facility from the power company. And we knew that nothing was energized at the whole facility, and we had people in there vacuuming out things and cleaning things. And we weren't worried about arc flash. We weren't worried about electrocution or anything else. It was safe. We had a licensed electrician company there. We had several electricians going around working with our people. But think about things that you can do to do that.
Yep, that's an app. It looks like that does the.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Fleur. Yeah, Fleur is awesome.
That's really good.
I've done a lot with them.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So Fleur Corporation, they've got an app that you can download and put on there.
Right on your phone.
Can't get too much cheaper than that.
I know, right?
But assess what your needs are and what you can do with that.
If you could, though, make sure you're training your cleaning people, right? So he was talking about new operators. He goes 3 weeks and they do all of those things. If you just hand Fred the shop vac with the metal tubes and he's plugging it into everything and doing all that, even if the power's off, if he's in a panel really getting aggressive with it and starts loosening up wires and breaking stuff, you don't want that. You don't want anybody to get hurt. So Please train them, document it. I know it's a safety geek saying that, but it will save your butt later on if something happens.
Yeah.
But train them how to do it. Not everybody is great at it, and it's a job everybody should be able to do. But please teach them what the hazards are and what he's doing, and teach them to recognize things while they're doing it. Hey, the hydraulic line is bad, or this plug is pulling out over here. You know, that motor isn't bolted down, that type of stuff. It can really save you some money. Cool.
That's great. That's the perfect start.
And he knows.
Yep.
Well, that's good.
He takes it seriously every day.
Yeah.
So we talked, Mike mentioned other senses, and this is again getting people in tune with the equipment and understanding the equipment. I talked about squeals but squeaks, smell. Does something smell hot? You walk into an area, you know when something smells hot. And somebody that's in tune with that equipment, whether they're sitting in the driver's seat or they're walking around the plant, can smell and hear. And the other thing is sight. I can tell you that having worked around a MRF, the general public hates us because they throw chains and hoses and cables and all kinds of crap into what is supposed to be a recycling bin. And next thing you know, your metering bin with the drum on it is getting all wrapped up with chains and everything else I mentioned, as are your star screens and everything else in the processes. And, looking to make sure, first of all, that your equipment operators that are feeding it, goes back to the solids, are watching for that kind of stringy material or what have you. But those chains and cables and things like that, when they get next to the bearings on the drum, guess what? After a while, the friction causes fire and you've got a major incident on your unit. So paying attention to that. How's your pre-sort? And I don't care whether it's, shredders or MRFs or whatever. Are people paying attention to what's going in there? I have a story that happened years ago. We bought a brand new Peterson grinder that was $900,000. We had the thing for 3 months, and what we were doing was pulling it in C&D material, construction and demolition material. We were running clean wood through it so that we could sell it to places to make particle board and other things with it. And somebody got the bright idea that we don't need the pre-sort anymore. We're not finding much or whatever. And I'm up in my office, like, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 feet away from that building, and my window shook. And I sat up and said, ruh-roh, and I went running down, and I ran the corner, and I literally had to buy the loader operator a new pair of shorts because of the bang, and it was a 1 pound propane cylinder. And those of you who are in the size reduction business understand what just 1 pound, never mind 100 pound, damage can do. Pay attention to what's going through the machinery and make sure the people that are doing that are competent and that they're paying attention. We talk about fire watch. Sorry.
The leading cause we find, other than fires with shredders, are foreign objects in the shredders. Not a good combination. LPG tanks, even worse.
So we talk about fire watch oftentimes and paying attention to that. Anybody take a guess on who usually ends up being the fire watch person? Any guesses?
Insurance adjusters.
No. Is it typically your stellar and absolute best person in your company that ends up being on fire watch? It's typically the guy sweeping the floor that doesn't give a rat's butt about anything. And I would suggest to you that your pre-sort people are key, your fire watch people are key. Don't use that guy. Keep them doing the stuff that they're good at and they're comfortable with, but don't, give them a chance, but don't make them the person that you're really relying on, and think ahead. What's going to happen if this place goes up in flames? What's going to happen if something gets by, that solid gets by and goes into that shredder? So, just give it some thought when you're walking around and pay attention to that. Anybody else?
I think
We're getting close to the end.
Yep.
And, I just want to make sure that, what did we miss? Is there something you want to share? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What a nice.
And the guy at fault at that is the company, not the employee. So everybody wants to rip up the employee. Who called it in? What? It doesn't matter who called it in. I don't care if somebody driving down the road called it in. If you have an unsafe act or something going wrong that's there, fix it. So in the trucking business, you fix it or you park it. In the recycling business and most businesses, get it fixed. It's cheaper to have good equipment and have it running correctly, and you get it done. Just manage your people. If you've got the pain in the neck guy that doesn't like the shade of yellow that piece of equipment is, you can work that piece out. But if an employee who operates it all day, every day is telling you that, hey, this just isn't right, work it out and get it done. So OSHA is not your enemy. It seems like it when they're there. Believe me, I've been in that seat many times, as recently as 2 weeks ago. So it does happen that they're out there, but please don't ignore the things. And if you do insurance work, and you can discuss this a little better, but the way to make a jury mad is to have negligence. You mean the employee told you 5 times that this was broken and you didn't fix it? Or backing accidents. I had a truck early on when I was back in the 80s when I was with BFI. It was in New Orleans, and the guy backed up and hit a child near an ice cream truck. So I get stuck investigating this thing. Looking through it, he had 11 backing accidents, and they got us for negligent entrustment. And the jury, and they just said, listen, you knew the guy couldn't back up. Probably about the 3rd time you should have figured out he's not so good at backing up. Now you put him in a neighborhood with ice cream trucks, and he backs over a child. So what are you doing? And they can really come after you. So if you have folks that are not quite as good or rounded leaders, that they're just looking at costs of things, hit them over the head with the costs, right? Lawsuits will put you out of business, and insurance companies don't like you very much after you do.
We got one more.
No.
From
Cost perspective. Right?
Yeah.
He estimated about we just do.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure.
So on ongoing cost reduction.
Yeah. Sure. But as he talked about, it's the culture.
Yes.
Right? They think they're doing the right thing by saving money. Run those tires down to 2/32 of an inch there. Well, you can't recap them as many times, right? So I was the enemy when I got to Casella. Listen, I want all the tires off the trucks at 6/32.
Right.
I can get this many more recaps on it, and it's a money-saving thing. Boy, that was a hard pill to swallow for some. No, we're going to run them right down to the end. If they can cap them, fine. If they can't, they're going to do something else. So, of course,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be catastrophic. A child in New Orleans, it can be, because the little things add up hugely. And all of your equipment, there's all kinds of hydraulic. You're going to be in business for a while.
Okay, we're out of time. I just wanted to point out that I work for you, and if I can do anything to help any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am on the ReMA website under staff. I'm Jerry Sjogren, and I'm passionate about safety and trying to help people make their program better. And I also learn from you too.
Right.
And I appreciate the opportunity to come visit and work with you. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope
Thank
you have
you,
a great
everyone.
day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.